Jake Martinez walked through the crystal corridors of the Galactic Academy, his boots making soft sounds on the smooth floor. The walls around him glowed with a soft blue light, and strange symbols moved across them like living things. Everything here was so different from Earth. The air smelled clean, almost too clean, and tasted like nothing at all. He carried his datapad close to his chest, checking the room numbers as he passed. Today was his first day in the advanced xenobiology class, and he was already 10 minutes late. The transport from Earth had been delayed, and he had spent the morning trying to find his way around the massive academy. Other students moved past him in the hallways. Most of them were tall and thin, with skin that looked like it was made of different materials. Some had scales that changed color as they walked. Others had fur or feathers. A few looked almost human, but their eyes were too big or their limbs too long. Jake felt short and thick compared to them. He found room 847 and stopped outside the door. Through the clear wall, he could see about 30 students sitting in curved seats that seemed to grow from the floor. At the front of the room, a creature with 4 arms and green skin was pointing at a holographic display of some kind of animal. Jake pressed his hand against the door scanner. It beeped, and the door slid open with a soft hiss. Every head in the room turned to look at him. The talking stopped. "Ah, our final human has arrived," said the teacher. His voice was deep and had a strange echo to it. "I am Dr. Korath. You must be Jake Martinez from Earth." Jake nodded and looked around the room. In the third row, he saw another human. She had dark hair and was trying to make herself look smaller in her seat. That must be Lyra Quinn, the other human in the program. He had read about her in the Academy files. "Please take a seat," Dr. Korath said. "We were just discussing the basic principles of predator behavior." Jake found an empty seat near the back. As he sat down, he heard whispers from the students around him. They were not speaking in Earth languages, but his translator device picked up some of the words. "Another Deathworlder," someone said. "Look how thick his bones are," said another voice. "I heard they eat dead animals," came a third whisper. Jake kept his face calm, but inside he felt angry. He had heard these things before. Ever since humans had joined the galactic community 5 years ago, most aliens saw them as primitive and violent. They called Earth a death world because of all the dangerous animals and plants that lived there. They thought humans were barely better than wild animals themselves. Dr. Korath continued his lesson. "As you can see from this display, most predators follow simple patterns. They hunt, they eat, they sleep. There is no complex thinking involved. They are driven by basic instincts." A student in the front row raised a long, thin arm. Jake could see that her skin was made of what looked like living crystal. "Dr. Korath, is it true that humans lived with predators on their world?" "Yes, Zixthan, that is correct," Dr. Korath replied. "Earth has many dangerous creatures. This is why humans develop such primitive responses to danger. Fight or flight, as they call it. Very simple thinking." Jake felt his jaw tighten. He wanted to say something, but he remembered what the human ambassador had told him before he left Earth. "Keep your head down. Learn what you can. Don't cause trouble." Zixthan turned in her seat to look at Jake. Her crystal face showed what might have been a smile. "Perhaps our human friend can tell us about living with monsters." The room went quiet again. Jake felt all the eyes on him. He took a deep breath. "Earth has dangerous animals, yes. But we learned to live with them. We studied them. We understood them. That is how we survived." "Survived," Zixthan repeated, and some students made sounds that might have been laughter. "How primitive double quotes." Dr. Korath held up one of his 4 hands. Now, let us not judge our human classmates too harshly. They have done well to rise above their violent nature. In fact, this is why they are here. To learn proper, civilized ways of thinking about the universe." Jake said nothing. He looked at the holographic display, which now showed a creature with 6 legs and a mouthful of teeth. The information next to it listed its hunting patterns, diet, and behavior. Jake read through it quickly, and something bothered him about the data. The creature was listed as a simple ambush predator from a world called Vextari. But as Jake looked at the behavioral notes, he saw things that did not match that description. The creature showed problem-solving abilities. It could use tools. It hunted in coordinated groups. This was not a simple predator. This was something much more dangerous. Jake raised his hand. Dr. Korath, I have a question about this creature. The professor looked annoyed. Yes? The data shows that it can use tools and hunt in groups. But it is classified as a simple predator. Are you sure this information is correct? Dr. Korath's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. The classification comes from the Galactic survey team. They are experts. I think they know more about alien creatures than someone from a death world. More laughter from the students. Jake felt his face grow hot, but he kept his voice steady. I am just saying that on Earth, animals that use tools and hunt in groups are usually much more intelligent than simple predators. This is exactly what I mean, Zixton said to the other students. Humans see everything as a threat. They cannot understand that most creatures in the galaxy are peaceful and simple. They live in fear. Jake wanted to argue, but he saw Lyra shake her head slightly. She was right. This was not the time or place. Dr. Korath moved on to the next part of the lesson. Tomorrow we will have a special treat. We will observe a live specimen of the creature we just studied. It will be brought here in the containment unit so we can see its behavior firsthand. Jake looked at the data again. Something was wrong. He was sure of it. But no one would listen to the human from the death world. As the class ended, students began to file out. Jake gathered his things slowly, still thinking about the creature. Lyra appeared beside him. Do not make waves, she said quietly. We are here to learn, not to teach. Jake nodded, but he could not shake the feeling that something bad was going to happen. On Earth, when something looked dangerous, it usually was he followed Lyra out of the classroom, but his mind stayed on the creature they would see tomorrow. Simple predator or not, Jake planned to stay alert. Jake arrived at the xenobiology classroom early the next morning. He wanted to see the containment unit before the other students arrived. The room had been changed overnight. The normal teaching area had been cleared away, and a large glass box now sat in the center of the room. The box was about the size of a small room, with thick transparent walls that hummed with energy. Inside, Jake could see artificial trees and rocks that looked like they came from the creature's home world. Everything looked peaceful and safe, but Jake was not looking at the scenery. He was looking at the joints where the glass panels met. He could see the electronic locks that held the box together. He studied the air vents that allowed the creature to breathe. He watched the small robots that moved food and water in and out of the box. Something was wrong with the design. The locks were not as strong as they should be. The vents were too big. The robots created gaps in the containment field every time they moved through the walls. Jake walked around the box slowly, making notes on his datapad. He had spent years studying animal enclosures on Earth. His father had been a zookeeper, and Jake had grown up watching how different animals tried to escape from their cages. He knew what to look for. You are here early, human. Jake turned around. Dr. Korath had entered the room, followed by 2 assistants carrying equipment. The professor's 4 arms moved independently as he set up recording devices around the containment unit. I wanted to see the setup, Jake said. It is very impressive. Double quotes. Dr. Korath seemed pleased. The containment technology is the best in the galaxy. The creature inside cannot possibly escape. The walls are made of reinforced crystal that can stop a starship's laser cannons. Jake nodded, but he was thinking about the electronic systems, not the walls. Strong walls did not matter if the doors could be opened. Other students began to arrive. Zixton entered with a group of her friends, all of them talking and laughing. They did not seem worried about being in the same room as a dangerous predator. Look at this tiny thing, Zixton said, pointing at the containment unit. They call this a classroom demonstration? We could have studied this creature from video files, her friends agreed. Why do we need all this security for such a simple animal? One of them asked. Lyra entered quietly and sat near Jake. She looked nervous. "How dangerous is this creature supposed to be?" she whispered. "According to the files, not very," Jake replied. "But I think the files are wrong," Dr. Korith called for attention. "Students, please take your seats. Today we will observe a live Shadow Maw from the jungle world of Vextari." A door opened in the floor of the containment unit. A platform rose up, carrying a large metal crate. The crate was dark inside, and Jake could not see what was in it. "The Shadow Maw is classified as a level 3 predator," Dr. Korith explained. "This means it is dangerous to small animals, but not a threat to intelligent species. It hunts by hiding and waiting for prey to come close. Very simple behavior." The metal crate opened with a soft click. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a shadow moved inside the darkness. The creature that emerged was not what Jake had expected. It was about the size of a large dog, but it moved like liquid darkness. Its body seemed to shift and change as it walked. Jake could see 6 legs, but sometimes it looked like there were more. Its eyes were large and bright, and they moved constantly, looking at everything. "As you can see," Dr. Korith said, "the creature is exploring its new environment. This is normal behavior. It is trying to understand its surroundings." Jake watched the Shadow Maw carefully. It was not just looking around. It was studying the walls of the containment unit. It walked along the edges, touching the glass with one of its limbs. It spent extra time near the electronic locks. "Professor," Jake said, raising his hand, "is it normal for the creature to focus so much on the containment system?" Dr. Korith looked annoyed. "It is simply curious about its environment. This is expected behavior for any animal in a new place." But Jake was not convinced. He had watched many animals in new enclosures, and this was different. The Shadow Maw was not just curious, it was investigating. It was learning. The creature moved to one of the air vents. It put its head close to the opening and seemed to be listening. Then it moved to the next vent and did the same thing. "It is mapping the airflow," Jake said quietly to Lyra. "What does that mean?" she asked. "It means it is smarter than they think it is." Zixton overheard them. "The human is seeing threats that do not exist," she said loudly. "This is typical Deathworlder paranoia." Dr. Korith nodded. "Zixton is correct. Humans tend to overestimate danger because of their violent background. What you are seeing is simple exploration, not intelligent planning." Jake wanted to argue, but he knew it would not help. Instead, he continued to watch the creature. The Shadow Maw had found the spot where the cleaning robots entered the containment unit. It touched the wall there with great care, as if it was trying to understand how the opening worked. Then it moved away and lay down under one of the artificial trees. "Excellent," Dr. Korith said. "The creature has found a comfortable spot and is now resting. This shows us that it has adapted well to its new environment." But Jake noticed that the creature was not really resting. Its eyes were still moving, watching everything. It had positioned itself so it could see all the walls of the containment unit. It was not sleeping. It was waiting. During the next hour, Dr. Korith explained the creature's supposed hunting patterns. According to the official files, the Shadow Maw was a simple ambush predator. It would hide in one place and wait for small animals to walk by. Then it would jump out and catch them. "The creature has no complex social structure," Dr. Korith said. "It does not use tools. It cannot solve problems. It operates on pure instinct." Jake watched the Shadow Maw and saw something very different. Every few minutes, the creature would get up and walk to a different part of the containment unit. But it was not walking randomly. It was testing different areas systematically. It would touch the walls, listen to the sounds, and then move to the next spot. "Professor," Jake said, "the creature seems to be following a pattern in its movements." Dr. Korith sighed. "Mr. Martinez, you are seeing patterns where none exist. This is another common trait among Deathworlders. Your species evolved to see danger everywhere, even when it is not there." Some of the other students laughed. Jake felt his face grow red, but he kept watching the creature. Near the end of the class, something happened that made Jake very worried. The Shadow Mall was near the robot access point when a cleaning robot entered the containment unit. The robot was small and moved slowly, cleaning the floor as it went. The creature watched the robot very carefully. It followed it around the containment unit, staying just close enough to observe. When the robot finished its work and moved toward the exit, the Shadow Mall positioned itself near the opening. Jake expected the creature to try to escape through the robot door. But it did not. Instead, it watched how the door opened and closed. It studied the timing. It learned the pattern. Then it went back to its resting spot and lay down as if nothing had happened. Jake felt ice in his stomach. This was not a simple predator. This was something much more dangerous. And tomorrow, Dr. Korath planned to bring the creature into the main lecture hall for a closer demonstration. As the class ended, Jake gathered his courage and approached the professor. Dr. Korath, I really think we should review the creature's classification before tomorrow's demonstration. Dr. Korath looked at him with tired eyes. Mr. Martinez, I appreciate your concern, but this creature has been studied by experts. It is perfectly safe. Perhaps you should focus on learning rather than worrying about dangers that exist only in your imagination. Jake left the classroom with a heavy heart. He knew something bad was going to happen, but no one would listen to him. He was just a human from a death world, and his opinion did not matter. But as he walked back to his dormitory, Jake made a decision. Tomorrow, he would be ready for whatever happened. Because on Earth, the animals that looked harmless were often the most dangerous of all. The main lecture hall was packed with students. Word had spread about the live creature demonstration, and students from other classes had come to watch. Jake sat in the middle section, his eyes fixed on the containment unit that had been moved. To the center of the room, the unit looked smaller in the big hall. The walls were the same thick crystal, but somehow it seemed less secure surrounded by so many people. Jake counted 63 students in the room, plus Dr. Korath and 2 assistants. Most of them were talking and laughing, treating the event like entertainment. I heard it is just a big lizard, said a student behind Jake. My cousin saw one. At the zoo on Altair Prime, said another. They sleep all day. Jake was not listening to their chatter. He was watching the Shadow Maw. The creature sat very still in its artificial jungle, but its large eyes moved constantly. It was studying the crowd. It was counting the exits. It was learning the layout of the room. Lyra slipped into the seat next to him. You look worried, she whispered. I am, Jake replied. This is a mistake. That thing is too smart to be in a room full of people. Dr. Korath said it was safe, Lyra said, but she did not sound convinced. Jake pointed at the creature. Look at how it is sitting. It is not random. It has positioned itself so it can see every entrance to this room. That is not instinct. That is planning. Dr. Korath called for attention. Students, please settle down. Today we will observe predator behavior in a controlled environment. This will help you understand how simple creatures react to stimuli. He activated a holographic display above the containment unit. As you can see, the Shadow Maw is in a resting state. This is normal behavior for ambush predators. They conserve energy between hunts. Jake watched the creature carefully. It was not resting. Its muscles were tense. Its breathing was controlled. It was ready to move at any moment. Now, Dr. Korath continued, we will introduce a food stimulus to observe the creature's hunting response. A small robot entered the containment unit carrying what looked like a piece of meat. The robot moved slowly across the floor, making soft beeping sounds. The Shadow Maw watched the robot but did not move. Jake expected it to attack the food, but it did not. Instead, it waited. Interesting, Dr. Korath said. The creature is not responding to the food. This suggests it is not hungry, or perhaps it does not recognize the stimulus as prey. But Jake saw something different. The creature was not interested in the food. It was interested in the robot. It was watching how the robot moved through the containment field. It was studying the timing of the security systems. The robot finished its task and moved toward the exit. As it approached the wall, a small opening appeared in the containment unit. The robot passed through, and the opening closed behind it. In that moment, Jake saw the creature's eyes flash. It had been waiting for this. It had learned the pattern. "Professor," Jake said, standing up. "I think we should end this demonstration now." Dr. Korath looked annoyed. "Mr. Martinez, please sit down. The creature is completely secure." "But it has been studying the containment system," Jake insisted. "It knows how the robot access works." Zix then laughed from her seat in the front row. "The human is afraid of a sleeping lizard? How typical." Other students joined in the laughter. Jake felt his face burn with embarrassment, but he did not sit down. "Please, just listen to me. That creature is not what you think it is." Dr. Korath held up a hand for silence. "Mr. Martinez, your concern is noted, but the containment system is designed by the best engineers in the galaxy. The creature cannot possibly escape." As if in response to his words, the Shadow Maw suddenly moved. It flowed across the containment unit like liquid darkness, heading straight for the robot access point. "What is it doing?" asked one of the assistants. The creature reached the wall and pressed itself against the spot where the robot had exited. It seemed to be listening to something. Then it moved to a different part of the wall and did the same thing. "It is mapping the containment field," Jake said. "It is finding the weak points." Dr. Korath was no longer smiling. "That is impossible. The creature does not have the intelligence to understand our technology." But even as he spoke, the Shadow Maw was moving to the electronic lock system. It touched the control panel with one of its limbs, and lights began to flash. "How is it doing that?" Lyra asked. Jake had a terrible feeling in his stomach. "It is not just touching the controls, it is manipulating them." The creature worked at the control panel for several minutes. Students watched in fascination as it seemed to understand the electronic systems. Some of them had stopped laughing. "This is impossible," Dr. Korath said. "The creature cannot understand our technology." But the Shadow Maw was proving him wrong. The lights on the control panel changed from blue to yellow. An alarm sound began to beep softly. "Dr. Korath," said one of the assistants, "I think we should activate the emergency protocols." "No," Dr. Korath said. "The containment cannot be breached. The creature is simply playing with the controls." Jake was already moving toward the exit. He grabbed Lyra's arm. "We need to get out of here, now." "But Dr. Korath said it was safe," she protested. "Dr. Korath is wrong," Jake said. "That thing is about to break free." As if it had heard him, the Shadow Maw suddenly stopped working on the control panel. It moved to the center of the containment unit and looked directly at Jake. For a moment, their eyes met across the room. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. The creature was not just intelligent, it was aware. It knew that he understood what it was doing. The Shadow Maw moved back to the control panel. This time it worked faster. The lights changed from yellow to red. The alarm sound got louder. "Dr. Korath," the assistant said urgently, "we need to evacuate the room." But Dr. Korath was staring at the creature in disbelief. "This cannot be happening." The classification said it was a simple predator. The control panel sparked. The red lights began to flash rapidly. The alarm became a steady wail. "Everyone remain calm," Dr. Korath announced, but his voice was shaking. The containment system has multiple backups. The creature cannot escape." Jake was already at the back of the room, pulling Lyra toward the exit. Other students were starting to look worried. Some of them were standing up and moving toward the doors. The Shadow Maw stepped back from the control panel. The lights went out. The alarm stopped. For a moment, the room was silent. Then, with a soft hiss, the containment unit began to open. The crystal walls retracted into the floor. The energy field that had held the creature disappeared. The artificial jungle sat exposed. In the middle of the lecture hall, the Shadow Maw stood in the center of its former prison and looked around the room. It tilted its head as if it was thinking. Then it smiled. Jake had never seen an alien creature smile before, but there was no mistaking the expression. The creature was pleased with itself. "Run," Jake said quietly. The creature heard him. It turned its head toward the sound of his voice. Its large eyes focused on him with interest. Then it moved. The Shadow Maw did not run like a normal animal. It flowed across the floor like liquid shadow, faster than anything Jake had ever seen. Students screamed and scrambled over each other trying to reach the exits, but the creature was not interested in the panicking crowd. It was moving toward the room's control systems. Jake realized with horror that it was going to trap them all. Inside, the creature reached the main door controls and began working on them with the same skill it had shown on the containment unit. Within seconds, the doors slammed shut. "Emergency protocols activated," announced the room's computer. "All exits sealed. Security has been notified." The Shadow Maw moved to the ventilation controls next. The lights dimmed. The air circulation changed. The room began to feel smaller. 63 students and 3 teachers were now trapped in a room with a creature that had just proven it was far more intelligent and dangerous than anyone had imagined. Jake looked around the room. Most of the students were huddled in corners, too frightened to move. Dr. Korith was standing frozen in the center of the room, staring at the creature that had destroyed everything he thought he knew about alien life. The Shadow Maw finished with the room controls and turned its attention to the crowd. It studied them for a moment as if deciding what to do next, then it began to hunt. The Shadow Maw did not attack randomly. It moved with purpose, studying the trapped students like a farmer looking at livestock. Its large eyes swept across the room, taking in every detail. It was planning something. Jake crouched behind a row of seats, pulling Lyra down beside him. Most of the other students were frozen with terror, but Jake's mind was racing. He had seen this behavior before, not in an alien creature, but in the wolves that sometimes came near his hometown on Earth. The creature was not hunting individual prey. It was hurting them. "Listen to me," Jake whispered to Lyra. "That thing is trying to push us all into one corner. It wants to group us together. Why would it do that?" Lyra asked, her voice shaking. Jake watched the creature move closer to a group of students near the left wall. They scrambled away, moving toward the center of the room where more students were huddled together. "Because it is easier to control a group than to catch individuals," Jake said. "We need to spread out, not bunch up." But the other students did not understand this. Every time the Shadow Maw moved toward them, they ran to join the largest group. They thought safety came from numbers. The creature seemed pleased with their reaction. It continued to move around the room, never attacking, just pushing the students closer together. Within minutes, most of the class was crowded into the center of the room, exactly where the creature wanted them. Dr. Korith stood with the group, his forearms shaking. "Security will be here soon," he said. "We just need to wait." Jake looked at the sealed doors. The creature had not just locked them. It had used the room's own systems to cut off communication with the outside. Security did not even know there was a problem. "We cannot wait," Jake said. "We need to act." He stood up and moved away from the group. The Shadow Maw noticed immediately. It turned its head toward him, and Jake felt those large eyes studying him with interest. "What are you doing?" Lyra hissed. "I am breaking the pattern," Jake replied. "That thing expects us to stay in a group. If I move away, it will have to choose between me and the crowd." The creature tilted its head, as if thinking. Then it began to move toward Jake. Jake did not run. Instead, he moved slowly toward the wall, keeping his eyes on the creature. On Earth, running from a predator was usually the worst thing you could do. It triggered their hunting instincts. The Shadow Maw followed him, but it moved carefully as if it was trying to understand what Jake was doing. When Jake reached the wall, he stopped and faced the creature. They stared at each other for a long moment. Jake could see intelligence in those large eyes, but also something else. The creature was curious about him. "You are different," Jake said quietly. "You know, I am not like the others." The creature's head tilted further. Jake was not sure if it understood his words, but it seemed to understand his tone. Behind them, the group's students watched in silence. Some of them had their data pads out, recording what was happening. Even in danger, they were thinking like researchers. Jake began to move along the wall, keeping his distance from the creature. The Shadow Maw followed, but it did not try to attack. It was studying him, learning his movements. "Jake, what are you doing?" Dr. Korith called out. "I am buying time," Jake replied, and I am learning about our guest." As he moved, Jake studied the room. The creature had locked the main doors, but there were other ways out: emergency exits, ventilation shafts, maintenance panels. The creature was smart, but it did not know everything about the building. More importantly, Jake was learning about the creature's abilities. It was fast, but not faster than his eyes could follow. It was strong, but it moved like something that relied on intelligence more than brute force. It was a thinking predator, not a mindless killer. The Shadow Maw suddenly stopped following him. It turned back toward the group's students and began to circle them. Jake realized what was happening. The creature had been using him as a test. It wanted to see how he would react. Now it was going back to its original plan. "It is getting ready to attack," Jake said loudly. "Everyone needs to spread out now." But the students did not listen. They huddled closer together, thinking the group would protect them. The creature began to move faster, circling the group like a shark around a school of fish. With each circle, it moved closer. The students pressed together so tightly that some of them could barely breathe. Jake saw what was about to happen. The creature was going to strike at the group when they were most vulnerable. It would cause panic, and in the chaos, students would be hurt or killed. He had to do something. Jake looked around the room for anything he could use. The demonstration equipment was still scattered around the area where the containment unit had been. He saw recording devices, holographic projectors, and control panels. An idea began to form in his mind. The creature was intelligent, but it was also curious. It had been studying the technology in the room. Maybe Jake could use that against it. He moved quickly toward the equipment. The Shadow Maw noticed and stopped circling the students. It watched. Jake, with interest. Jake picked up one of the holographic projectors. It was a small device that could create three-dimensional images in the air. He activated it and began to adjust the settings. The projector created a small hologram of a jungle scene. Trees, rocks, and flowing water appeared in the air above the device. The Shadow Maw's eyes focused on the image immediately. "You recognize this?" Jake said to the creature. "This is home." The creature moved closer to the hologram, but it kept its distance from Jake. It was fascinated by the familiar sights from its world. Jake slowly adjusted the controls, making the jungle scene larger and more detailed. The Shadow Maw moved even closer, its attention completely focused on the hologram. While the creature was distracted, Jake used his other hand to pick up a sonic amplifier. The device was used to project sound during demonstrations. Jake connected it to his datapad and began to play sounds from the Vextari jungle. The combination of sights and sounds from its homeworld had a powerful effect on the creature. It stopped hunting and stood very still, as if it was remembering something important. "That is good," Jake said softly. "Remember home? Remember what you are?" The other students watched in amazement as the dangerous predator became calm and peaceful. Dr. Korath stared at Jake with new respect. "How did you know to do that?" Lyra asked. "Animals are happier when they feel safe," Jake replied. "And home is the safest place of all." But Jake knew this was only a temporary solution. The creature would eventually lose interest in the hologram. He needed to find a way to open the doors before that happened. He looked at the room's control panels. The creature had locked them using the same electronic skills it had shown with the containment unit. But Jake had grown up with Earth technology. He understood how systems worked when they broke down. Moving carefully so he would not disturb the creature, Jake approached the door controls. He could see that several circuits had been damaged when the Shadow Maw had forced the lockdown. But damage could be repaired. Jake opened the control panel and began to work on the wiring. He had helped his father repair zoo equipment many times. Electronic systems were not that different from mechanical ones. The creature noticed what he was doing. It moved away from the hologram and watched Jake work, but it did not try to stop him. "You understand, do not you?" Jake said to the creature. "You want to go home too." The Shadow Maw tilted its head and made a soft sound. It was not the growl of a predator. It was something sadder. Jake continued working on the controls. One by one, he repaired the damaged circuits. The door systems began to respond. Almost there, he said. The creature moved closer to Jake, but not in a threatening way. It was watching his hands work on the electronic systems. It seemed to understand that Jake was trying to help with. A soft beep, the door controls came back online. The sealed exits began to open. Everyone moved slowly toward the doors, Jake said. Do not run. Do not make sudden movements. The students began to file out of the room, moving carefully past the creature. The Shadow Maw watched them go, but it did not try to stop them. When the last student had left, only Jake, Lyra, and Dr. Korath remained in the room with the creature. What do we do now? Dr. Korath asked. Jake looked at the Shadow Maw, which was still watching the hologram of its homeworld. Now we figure out how to get our friend back where it belongs. The peace did not last long. The Shadow Maw had been studying Jake while he worked on the door controls. It had learned his movements, his patterns, and his methods. Now it was ready to test him. The creature stepped away from the hologram and faced Jake directly. Its posture changed from curious to dangerous. The intelligence in its eyes sharpened into something predatory. Jake, Lyra said quietly, I think it wants to fight you. Jake nodded slowly. He had seen this before on Earth. Predators. The creature had marked him as a rival, another apex predator in its territory. It would not be satisfied until one of them proved dominance over the other. Dr. Korath, take Lyra and get out of here, Jake said without taking his eyes off the creature. We cannot leave you alone with that thing, Dr. Korath protested. You have to, Jake replied. This is between me and it now. If you stay, you will just get in the way. The Shadow Maw made a low sound that might have been agreement. It understood what Jake was saying, even if the others did not. Lyra grabbed Jake's arm. Come with us. We can lock it in here and wait for security. Jake shook his head. Security will not know how to handle it. They will try to kill it, and it will kill them first. Someone has to contain it properly. But you are just one person, Dr. Korath said. Jake smiled grimly. I am a human. We are very good at dealing with things that want to kill us. The creature suddenly moved, flowing across the room faster than before. Jake was ready. He dove to the side, rolling behind the demonstration equipment. The Shadow Maw's claws scraped against the floor where he had been standing. Go! Jake shouted to the others. Now, Dr. Korath and Lyra ran for the door. The Shadow Maw started to follow them, but Jake threw a piece of equipment at it. The device hit the creature in the side, and it spun around to face him again. That is right, Jake said. I am your real opponent. The doors sealed shut behind the others. Jake was alone with the Shadow Maw in the lecture hall. The creature circled him slowly, looking for weaknesses. Jake backed toward the room's environmental controls. Every classroom in the academy had systems that could simulate different planetary conditions for educational purposes. If he could reach them, he might be able to change the playing field. The creature anticipated his movement and cut him off. It was learning his tactics too quickly. Jake needed to try something different. He feinted left, then rolled right toward a storage cabinet. The Shadow Maw followed his movement but arrived a second too late. Jake grabbed a gravity manipulator from the cabinet and activated it. The device created a field of altered gravity around the creature. The Shadow Maw suddenly weighed 3 times more than normal. It struggled to move as its own body worked against it, but the creature was adaptable. Instead of fighting the increased gravity, it used it. It dropped to the floor and began to crawl, moving like a liquid shadow even under the heavy gravitational pull. Jake realized his mistake too late. The creature reached the gravity manipulator and destroyed it with one powerful swipe. The gravitational field collapsed, and the Shadow Maw was free again. Now it was angry. The creature attacked with renewed fury. Jake barely managed to stay ahead of its claws as it chased him around the room. He grabbed chairs and threw them behind him, trying to slow the creature down. But the Shadow Maw was too fast and too smart. It anticipated every obstacle. Jake's back hit the wall. He was trapped with nowhere to run. The creature approached slowly, savoring its victory, but Jake was not finished. He slammed his hand against the environmental control panel on the wall. The room's atmosphere began to change. The first thing that happened was the temperature. Jake set it to match the cold mountains of his home state in Earth. The shadow maw slowed as the heat it was used to drained away. Next, Jake changed the air pressure. He increased it to match the dense atmosphere of Earth's low-altitude regions. The creature had evolved in the thin air of Vextari's jungle canopy. The heavy air made it harder for it to breathe. Finally, Jake activated the room's weather simulation. Rain began to fall from hidden nozzles in the ceiling. The shadow maw hated the water. It tried to find shelter, but Jake had made sure there was none. The creature was now fighting on Jake's terms instead of its own, but it was still dangerous. It adapted to the new conditions faster than Jake had hoped. The shadow maw learned to move in the heavy air. It found ways to stay warm in the cold. It even began to use the rain to its advantage, using the sound of falling water to mask its movements. Jake realized he was facing something truly extraordinary. This was not just an intelligent predator, it was a master of adaptation. Every challenge he gave it only made it stronger. The creature cornered him again, this time near the room's main computer terminal. Jake had one last idea, but it was dangerous. If he was wrong, they would both die. He activated the room's holographic system and projected images all around them. Not just one scene from Vextari, but dozens of different environments. Jungles, deserts, mountains, oceans. The room became a swirling maze of overlapping realities. The shadow maw stopped attacking and stared at the chaos of images. Its eyes tried to process all the different environments at once. For a moment, it seemed confused. Jake used the distraction to reach the room's main controls. He began to rapidly change every environmental setting. Temperature, pressure, humidity, gravity, atmosphere, composition. He made the room into a constantly shifting nightmare of different planetary conditions. The creature could adapt to any single environment, but it could not adapt to all of them at once. It began to struggle as its body tried to adjust to conditions that kept changing every few seconds. "I am sorry," Jake said to the creature, "but this is the only way." He continued to manipulate the controls, keeping the creature off balance. But he was careful not to create conditions that would actually harm it. He just wanted to overwhelm its ability to adapt. The shadow maw finally stopped trying to attack him. It crouched in the center of the room, surrounded by swirling images of dozens of different worlds. It looked at Jake with something that might have been respect. Jake slowly approached the creature, keeping the environmental chaos active. When he was close enough, he began to speak to it in a calm voice. "You are far from home," he said. "I understand what that feels like. I am far from home too." The creature listened to his words. It seemed to understand that Jake was no longer fighting it. "You do not belong in a cage," Jake continued. "No intelligent being does. But you cannot stay here either. These people do not understand what you are." He reached the creature and slowly extended his hand. The shadow maw looked at his hand for a long moment. Then it reached out with one of its own limbs and touched Jake's fingers. The contact lasted only a second, but in that moment Jake felt a connection with the alien creature. They were both predators, both survivors, both far from the worlds that had made them what they were. The creature pulled back its limb and made a soft sound. It was not the growl of a hunter or the cry of an animal. It was something sadder and more complex. It was the sound of loneliness. Jake understood. The creature was not evil or mindlessly violent. It was intelligent and emotional and homesick. It had been classified wrong, caged like a simple animal, and put on display for the entertainment of beings who did not understand it. "I will help. You get home," Jake promised. "But first you have to trust me." The shadow maw looked into Jake's eyes for a long moment. Then it nodded. Jake began to slowly shut down the environmental chaos. As the room returned to normal conditions, the creature remained calm. It had made its choice. The doors to the room opened, and security officers rushed in with weapons drawn. But they stopped when they saw Jake standing peacefully next to the shadow maw. "Do not shoot," Jake said calmly. "Everything is under control." The security chief looked confused, but the report said there was a dangerous creature loose. Jake looked at the Shadow Maw, which looked back at him with intelligent eyes. "There was a misunderstanding," he said, "but we have worked it out." The creature made another soft sound, almost like agreement. Jake smiled. For the first time since coming to the academy, he felt like he belonged somewhere. Not because he had learned to fit in with the aliens, but because he had found another being who understood what it meant to be different. The academy's main conference room was packed with officials, professors, and students. Jake sat at a long table facing the Galactic Academy Council. Beside him sat the Shadow Maw, calm and alert in a specially designed chair that accommodated its unique body shape. 3 days had passed since the incident in the lecture hall. 3 days of meetings, interviews, and investigations. The creature that had once been treated like a simple animal was now recognized as an intelligent being, with rights and needs. Dr. Korth sat across from them, looking very different from the confident professor Jake had first met. His forearms moved nervously as he reviewed the reports spread across the table. "The investigation is complete," announced Chancellor Vexhai, the Academy's leader. Her voice carried the weight of someone who had made difficult decisions. The creature was misclassified due to incomplete data from the original survey team. She looked directly at Jake. "Student Martinez, your actions saved the lives of 63 students and faculty members. More importantly, you prevented what could have been a tragic misunderstanding between our species and a new intelligent life form." Jake nodded but said nothing. He had learned that sometimes it was better to listen than to speak. "The Shadow Maw," the Chancellor continued, "has been reclassified as a Class A intelligent species. We are now in communication with the government of Vextari to arrange its safe return home." At the mention of home, the creature made a soft sound. Jake had learned to recognize its different vocalizations over the past 3 days. This one meant happiness. Dr. Korth stood up slowly. "Chancellor, I take full responsibility for this incident. I should have listened to Student Martinez's concerns. I should have questioned the classification data more carefully." The Chancellor looked at him with stern eyes. "Dr. Korth, your overconfidence nearly caused a disaster. However, your willingness to learn from this experience is noted. You will be reassigned to work with our new Department of Interspecies Understanding." She turned back to Jake. "Which brings us to you, Mr. Martinez. The Council has been discussing your future at the Academy." Jake felt his stomach tighten. He had been expecting this. Humans were still not fully accepted in galactic society. This incident might have made things worse for his people. "We have decided," the Chancellor said, "to offer you a position as a special advisor to the Galactic Council's new Hazardous Situations Division." Jake blinked in surprise. "I'm sorry, what?" "The galaxy is full of dangerous situations that require unique solutions," the Chancellor explained. "Your ability to understand predator behavior, combined with your species' natural survival instincts, makes you valuable in ways we never considered." Zixthan, who had been sitting quietly in the back of the room, stood up. "Chancellor, with respect, how can we trust a human with such responsibility? They are still a primitive species." The Shadow Maw turned its head toward Zixthan and made a low growling sound. The crystalline alien quickly sat back down. Jake almost smiled. The creature had become protective of him over the past few days. They had spent hours together while scientists studied their interaction. A friendship had formed between two beings who understood what it meant to be misunderstood. "Zixthan raises an important point," the Chancellor said. "But perhaps our definition of primitive needs to be examined." She activated a holographic display showing footage from the incident. "In this recording, we see a human student recognizing a threat that trained scientists missed. We see him adapt to a dangerous situation using intelligence, creativity, and empathy." The footage showed Jake working with the environmental controls, communicating with the Shadow Maw, and eventually establishing trust with a creature that could have killed him easily. "Most importantly," the Chancellor continued, "we see him treating an alien being with respect and understanding, even while defending himself against it." She looked around the room. "These are not the actions of a primitive being. These are The actions of someone who understands that intelligence comes in many forms. Lyra raised her hand from her seat in the audience. Chancellor, what does this mean for other human students? It means, the Chancellor replied, that we will be reviewing our policies regarding humans and other so-called Deathworlder species. We have learned that survival experience creates forms of wisdom that peaceful species may lack. Dr. Korith nodded slowly. In my classes, I taught that predators were simple creatures driven by instinct. I was wrong. Student Martinez showed me that understanding predators requires the kind of intelligence that only comes from living with them. He looked at Jake. I would like to request that you assist in redesigning our xenobiology curriculum. We need to learn from someone who truly understands dangerous life forms. Jake looked at the Shadow Maw, who made an encouraging sound. I would be honored to help, Jake said. But I have one condition. The Chancellor raised an eyebrow. Which is? No more studying intelligent creatures in cages, Jake said firmly. If we want to understand them, we need to communicate with them, not capture them. The Shadow Maw made a sound that Jake had learned meant strong agreement. That seems reasonable, the Chancellor said. In fact, it will be one of the first policies of our new department. Over the following weeks, Jake's life at the academy changed completely. Instead of being treated as a primitive outsider, he became a respected member of the academic community. Students who had once mocked him now sought his advice on understanding dangerous situations. The Shadow Maw remained at the academy for another month, while transportation to Vextari was arranged. During that time, it worked with Jake and other researchers to establish communication protocols with its species. It turned out that the Shadow Maws were not just intelligent individuals, but part of a complex civilization that had been hiding from galactic contact. They were afraid of us, Jake explained to his new xenobiology class. They saw how we treated animals, and they decided to pretend to be simple predators rather than reveal their intelligence. The class, which now included students from dozens of different species, listened carefully to his words. Even Zixton was taking notes. This teaches us an important lesson, Jake continued. Intelligence is not always obvious. Sometimes the beings we think are simple are actually the smartest ones in the room. When the day came for the Shadow Maw to return home, Jake felt sad to see his friend leave. They had learned so much from each other. The creature approached Jake one last time before boarding the transport ship. It reached out with one of its limbs and touched Jake's hand, just as it had done during their confrontation in the lecture hall. This time, the touch lasted longer. The Shadow Maw made a complex series of sounds that Jake's translator had learned to interpret. Thank you for seeing me as I really am, the creature was saying. You taught me that not all aliens are the same, just as I taught you that not all predators are simple. Jake smiled. Take care of yourself. Maybe someday I will. Visit your world. The creature made a sound that meant laughter. You would be welcome. My people would like to meet the human who understands that strength and intelligence can exist together. As the transport ship disappeared into the stars, Jake felt a hand on his shoulder. Lyra had come to see the Shadow Maw off. So what happens? Now? She asked. Jake looked around at the academy, where humans were now treated as equals rather than curiosities, where dangerous situations were approached with understanding rather than fear, where intelligence was measured not by how peaceful a species was, but by how well they adapted to their environment. Now we show the galaxy what humans can really do, Jake said. Not by fighting or conquering, but by understanding. By seeing things that others miss. By finding solutions where others see only problems. In the months that followed, Jake helped establish new protocols for first contact with unknown species. He trained security teams in dealing with dangerous life forms without unnecessary violence. He worked with scientists to develop better ways of studying alien behavior. Most importantly, he helped change the way the galaxy saw humans. No longer were they viewed as primitive Deathworlders who had gotten lucky. They were recognized as a species with unique skills that made them valuable partners in exploring and understanding the universe. The Academy erected a small monument where the lecture hall incident had taken place. It showed a human and an alien. Creatures standing together, representing the moment when two very different forms of intelligence learned to respect each other. Jake would often stop by the monument between classes. It reminded him that the universe was full of beings who were different from each other, but that difference was something to celebrate, not fear. The inscription on the monument was simple: understanding begins when we stop seeing others as threats and start seeing them as friends we have not met yet. As Jake read those words, he thought about all the other humans who would come to the academy in the years ahead. They would not have to prove themselves the way he had. They would be welcomed as equals from the start, and somewhere in the jungles of Vextari, a creature that had once been caged was now free, telling its own people about the strange human who had seen past its fearsome appearance to find the intelligence. Within, the galaxy was a little less lonely for both their species, and that made all the difference.